Hey guys, welcome into the 14. I'm Nick Cole, and we're breaking down each SEC football game in Week 12 from a betting perspective. Today, we're talking about the South Alabama Jaguars visiting the Tennessee Vols. This game's going to be on Saturday, November 20th at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time at Neyland Stadium in Knoxville. This game's going to be broadcast on ESPNU. This game, from a betting perspective, opened with Tennessee as a 27-point favorite, and that number has moved slightly as of Thursday afternoon. The Vols are favored by 28 points. The over-under opened at 68.5, and that number has actually moved quite a bit. It's down to 62 as of the recording of this video. Bring in our betting analyst, Christopher Smith. Christopher, what do you make of that movement on the over-under in this game for a team that likes to move the ball as fast as the Vols do?
Yeah, I think the total movement is a little bit more to do with people realizing that Jake Bentley has been injured. I have to admit, I didn't realize, he didn't play the week before this weekend, but certainly, now that they're playing Tennessee, I think that's come more to the forefront. And looking at what South Alabama's offense can do in this game, I think that has a lot to do with the total change here. But why don't you tell us about the weather forecast, the injuries, and Nick's news and notes?
Sure. So we've got ourselves a late November Saturday night in Knoxville. So the temperatures at kickoff are going to be in the low 40s, but they're going to drop in the upper 30s for the majority of this game. But the good news is it's just going to be mostly cloudy, and the wind's going to be like 1 to 2 miles per hour projected there. So should have a nice, crisp, late fall evening on Rocky Top to bet on this game. And from an injury standpoint, we'll start with Tennessee. Tennessee starting wide receiver Javonte Payton left the game last week against Georgia and is questionable for this one. And several other depth players for the Vols are contending with injuries, but not any really other frontline starters at this point. So watch for Peyton's status as we approach kickoff on Saturday. On the South Alabama side, you already mentioned Jake Bentley, and half of our audience is probably scratching their head going, the guy that played quarterback at South Carolina for like 100 years? Yeah, same guy playing out what feels like his 8th year of eligibility at his third FBS school at South Alabama, was actually the quarterback doing pretty well for the Jaguars this season. And unfortunately, he tore his MCL against Troy earlier in November. And while that sounds like something that would keep him out for the rest of the season, is actually, interestingly enough, he's been practicing in the days leading up to this game, although it seems like reports out of Alabama are that he may sit this one out and that the practice is more about trying to get him ready to play in the season finale game, which may be their key to bowl eligibility. Offensive lineman Josh McCullough has missed the last 4 games for the Jaguars, and he's questionable for this one as well. And 2 of the team's safeties are out for the year due to injury. So those are some things to keep in mind as you're betting this one. On the news and notes standpoint, let's start with Tennessee and talk about how this is probably a breath of fresh air for this program. It's been through the ringer for the last month, right? The last 4 games they've played have been against top 20 teams. That's from October 16th to November 13th. They've done nothing but play top 20 programs. That includes games against Alabama and Georgia. They went 1-3 in that stretch. And most recently, they lost 41-17 against Georgia at Neyland Stadium in week 11 on Saturday there. And that game looked good for the Vols for the first offensive possession. But then Georgia, just in the way that they have every other team that they played defensively, just grinded away. The final result was probably what we should have expected all along, a three-ish touchdown victory for Georgia. And really, to me, what it showed from a Vols, if you're trying to take away from the Vols, is that they've got potential to compete at the top level offensively with this scheme. What they don't have right now is the overall defensive development that they need to compete. You saw Georgia's defense versus their defense. That was a stark contrast. And then just the depth that you need to compete with a power like Alabama or Georgia. That's what we're seeing in the second half of these games. They're competing for short periods of time with their top line talent and their scheming. And then when it gets to need to be, deep and well conditioned, they're falling a little bit short in the second half. So maybe that'll change for Josh Heupel as he gets some recruiting classes in there, because I know he lost a lot of players to transfer when the coaching change happened. And then on the South Alabama side of things, they're also 5-5 under a first-year head coach. Kane Womack has them knocking on the door of bowl eligibility. We talked a little bit about Jake Bentley being a big piece of that earlier. One thing I would point out is that they are only 2-5 in their last 7 games, and that includes losing every game since they lost Jake Bentley on November 6th. So they're 0-2 without him as their quarterback there. So it'll be interesting, Christopher, as you try to analyze a 4-touchdown line on this, what we've seen both of these teams go through in the last couple of weeks. How do you make the decision on which side to bet?
Yeah, well, I mean, look at Tennessee's offense, first of all, and Hendon Hooker is having a terrific season. I know inexplicably that Joe Milton III was the starter early in the year for Tennessee, and I know Hooker did not play well against the Georgia Bulldogs, but outside of that, he's been great. I mean, 22 touchdowns to 3 interceptions. He's running for 6.5 yards per non-sack carry. And this is a spot with the tempo that Tennessee runs and the talent disparity where Tennessee's offense could rack up some huge numbers behind a quarterback that is doing surprisingly well. Now, on the other side of the ball, South Alabama's offense is very, very one-dimensional, at least in this game especially. I mean, Tennessee's defensive stats, their defensive line and their run defense has been quite mediocre as the season has gone along, which you kind of expect with the way they play. But in this game, actually, it'll be a big advantage for the Vols, big mismatch. And that's because Pro Football Focus rates this South Alabama offensive line as 127th in run blocking and 121st in pass protection. They're 118th in line yards. Now, against Appalachian State, they average 1.8 yards per carry. Against Troy, they average 3.2 yards per carry. Those are the last 2 games. So even though Tennessee's mediocre, you're putting up those rush numbers against Troy. If you're a Tennessee fan, you got to feel good about at least being able to hold South Alabama under 3 yards per carry running the ball. So what does that mean? Well, it means that South Alabama's offense comes down to receiver Jalen Tolbert. Now, I think he's an NFL prospect. He might have a good future ahead of him in the NFL. And he's already locked in back-to-back 1,000-yard receiving seasons. But if you look at his numbers in the 5 games before Bentley got hurt, he was averaging 130 receiving yards per game in those. And in the 2 games where backup Desmond Trotter has been the quarterback, he's been averaging 86.5. So big drop off in his numbers when Trotter is the quarterback. And that's not a good trend when you're going to play Tennessee, not when you can't run the ball and not when you don't have really any other weapons that are going to threaten the balls downfield. So, Nick, why don't you get into who you're going to pick in this game?
Sure, Christopher. Before I reveal my picks, I'd like to give our viewers, a chance to make some extra money while they bet this game. We've got a partnership with Action 24/7 Sportsbook, and it's a deal for new customers. For a limited time only, you can get your deposit matched up to 100% for up to $800. So if you sign up today, make your first deposit using code SOUTH14, that's SOUTH14, and Action will double your money up to $800. Download the app or visit action247.com to get things started. Action 24/7 is by Tennesseans for Tennesseans. You've got action. So my action on this game is I sort of try to soak in all the things that we've seen from Tennessee over the last month, what we know about South Alabama. We know that Jake Bentley probably is not playing in this one and how that impacts their offense. We've seen that over the last couple of weeks. So I like the Vols minus 28. That's a lot of points to lay for a team that's 1-3 of their last 4, but they play at a tempo and against a competition at which I feel pretty comfortable that they're going to run up some points on Saturday night. And I feel like it's going to be cathartic for them in some ways to get to that 6. They're trying to get that 6th win, right? And they're trying to shake off a couple of tough losses against some tough teams. So I expect a big night for the Vols. I'm going to lay the 28. I'm going to go over 62 because I think they're going to get most of the way there by themselves. How do you see this one?
Yeah, I mean, I know we picked the side and the total in these games, but if you're watching this video and you have other alternative ways to bet on this game, I would probably say the 3 bets that I like, or really the 2 bets that I like the most are probably Tennessee against the spread in the first half and the South Alabama team total under. But, you know, since we pick every game against the spread and for the total for the full game, I'll go with Tennessee minus 28 under 62. I would probably lean toward the full game under out of those 2 bets just because I think South Alabama is going to have trouble scoring more than 10 to 13 points in this game. And I think Tennessee in the second half is not going to really do anything too exciting or aggressive. I could see them getting, to 49 in this game and still not being able to cover. South Alabama's got a decent defense in terms of preventing big plays. So we'll both go Tennessee minus 28. You're on the over, I'm on the under. For Nick Cole, I'm Christopher Smith for the 14, and we'll talk to you next week.